at religion under Henry VII, it's really important that we spend a little bit of time on it, not loads, but if nothing else for the context of we can see the extent to which what happens under Henry VIII is a major, major change. So I want to start with this extract, and if you've got your Tilbrook, it's page 51, chapter 6 that we're having a look at. We're not going to do all of it, but we are going to use this as our basis for religion. It's not me being lazy, you know, that I do like using historians generally or, you know, notes that I've taken, but on religion and Henry VII, Tilbrook is excellent, really, really good. So I see this as the best source that we could be using right now. Now, Tilbrook has decided to choose this lead interpretation, this from Eamon Duffy. Now, Eamon Duffy is a superb historian, wrote a brilliant book, Voices of Morbath, which looks at one village community and takes them right through the Reformation to see the material effect of it. Well worth reading, absolutely superb book. I do have a copy in school if when things are back to normal, you want to have a look at it. But Eamon Duffy, in his book about religion in England, the stripping of the altars. So what this book is all about is the journey that religion takes across not just the Tudor period. It does start a bit earlier, but we're picking up from the period of Henry VII. And Duffy says, late medieval Catholicism. Now, at this point, Catholicism is Christianity. There is no Catholic and Protestant at this stage. There certainly isn't any Puritan or anything like that. If you are Christian, if you believe in God, then you are Catholic. We'll come on to that in a little bit more detail later. But it says late medieval Catholicism exerted an enormously strong, diverse, and vigorous hold over the imagination and the loyalty of the people. Traditional religion had about it no particular marks of exhaustion and decay, and indeed in a whole host of ways, from the multiplication of religious books to adaptations of the saints, showed that it was well able to meet new needs and new conditions. The teachings of late medieval Christianity were graphically represented, endlessly reiterated in sermons and saints' lives, enacted in the Corpus Christi and miracle plays, and carved and painted on the walls, screens, bench ends, and windows of the parish churches. So essentially, according to Eamon Duffy, religion is in rude health during the reign of Henry VII. There is no suggestion, no hint at all that the major cataclysmic, if you are a Catholic, changes that are going to happen under Henry VIII and on Central Europe, thanks to the influence of Martin Luther. There's no indication that's going to happen in England. Religion is absolutely fine. It's popular. It's thriving. And I think the line that I most want to focus on in terms of highlighting the interpretation of Duffy, which is perhaps slightly controversial, is this, that it showed that religion was able to meet new needs and new conditions. Because a counter-interpretation that has been put forward about traditional Catholicism is that it was outdated and that it had simply sort of outgrown the modern age. That the ideas had outgrown Catholicism. They have moved on, and that's where Protestantism comes from. Okay, so Duffy is arguing that that just isn't the case. Now, what is the church actually for? So during the reign of Henry VII, all English people belonged, at least theoretically, to the Catholic Church and were under the jurisdiction of the Pope in Rome. Although prayers in the Mass were always said for the Pope, what really counted for ordinary people was their own religious experience, which was central to the lives of most people living in the 15th century. Now, as I've said, I would like you to be taking Cornell notes from this lesson. So I would be picking out there already. I would have the idea that, and I'll put this directly on the document so you can see. So in my class notes, I might put a little, if it lets me, there we go. I might put a little side heading, Duffy's interpretation. And my bullet points are that church is popular and traditional. Church adapting comfortably to the modern age. Okay, so I've picked that out. I think under my key points, I'm going to put no decay in church support. And below that, where I've just talked about the function of churchmen, that idea, I think, is, I'm going to put function so I know what we're talking about. Religious experience, central to common lives. Okay, so that's all I'm taking from it. Again, you've got your Tilbrook. You can go back to your Tilbrook anytime, so there's no need to regurgitate what he's already included. Do as I said, Aaron, I think you came slightly late after I said this. If you have any questions, and I will be asking you questions as we go, I'm not going to leave you on mute for the whole time, but if you have any questions whilst we go, do feel free to click the raise hand button, or even just unmute and interrupt me, because there's not many of us on here. Okay, so carrying on with what Tilbrook has to say. Lives were lived and regulated according to the church's major ceremonies. The parish church, of which there were over 8,000, was the focus of religious experience. The church provided the focus of popular entertainment. Its festivals, which are closely linked to the agricultural year, provided much needed enjoyment, and its guilds and confraternities, which is voluntary associations, offered charity, good fellowship, and a chance for ordinary people to contribute to the good of their local community. So again, I'm not going to do this for all of them, but just while I'm demonstrating how we do it, I might add to my Cornell notes, social lives of commoners dependent on the church, welfare for ordinary people, organised and distributed, sorry, let's go for administered by the church. So this idea, essentially what Tilbrook's saying, and what I want to get across, is that the church is at the centre of what the lived experience is for normal people. Okay. The church made it easier for the social and political elites to maintain social control through its encouragement of good behaviour, obedience, and stress on the values of community. It also provided employment opportunities and, for a few like Cardinal Wolsey, the opportunity to advance themselves socially through the attainment of high office in church and state. So in your corner notes, think about how you can include the idea of preserving the hierarchy through teaching respect for your betters and providing a career for ambitious people who were not in the nobles. Now we're going to come to another historian now. This is John Guy. John Guy says that Henry VII changed the character of the bench of bishops to the extent that he weakened its religious leadership. His policy marked a real shift. Most of Henry's theologians, too, were administrators. This transformation of the bishop's bench was a deliberate strategy. Moreover, service to the state, even to the detriment of the church, was required of his bishops. Now, this is really interesting, and this is why, as I say, I think it's really important that we spend some time looking at religion under Henry VII, rather than just only focusing on Henry VIII, because clearly there is some level, some degree of change here. Now, this all links into the Wars of the Roses. In effect, this all links into the idea of Henry trying to reassert the authority of the crown. So not only is Henry looking to assert the authority of the crown over those overmighty nobles, but arguably, to an extent, and he's a very devout man, Henry VII, he certainly isn't looking to challenge the authority of the Pope, but certainly the importance of the country can be said to be rated of the equivalent importance, shall we say, as the obedience and servitude towards the church. Now, under Henry VII, spoiler alert, there is no point at all where these two ideas come into clash. We're not going to see something Henry VII wants to do directly challenging the authority of something the Roman Catholic Church wants to do. But if that were to occur, to play the counterfactual idea of the what-ifs of history, it is possible that Henry VII might have been a bit more like his youngest son in terms of saying that actually the national interest is more important than the will of the Pope. Now, that doesn't happen, so that is entirely counterfactual, and I don't want you to confuse events of the reign of Henry VII with Henry VIII, but I think it's important to see that this idea of thinking about the importance and primacy of the king as the leader in all aspects of the life of the nation is not something which is just concocted by Henry VIII and Thomas Cromwell to solve the problem, the break with Rome. It's already there. It's already being thought about and already being speculated over. To what extent should the leader of a state be calling the shots in terms of the religion? Now, as Tilbrook goes on to say, the political role of the church was significant, both in terms of international relations and in domestic matters. Sorry. The church was held by the Pope in Rome, who not only wielded considerable spiritual power, but was also the head of a substantial state in northern Italy. It is typical both of Henry VII's carefulness and the Pope's influence that he sought, through Thomas Morton, a dispensation to marry Elizabeth of York. Dispensation means permission. Okay. On the other hand, successive popes did little at this time to interfere directly with the running of the church in England. The relationship between church and state was Erastian. Now, Erastian means that state should have the authority over the church. So, for example, a good example would be the church courts. The state, the court of the king, the legal system of the king, outranked, was considered more important than the church courts. Okay. The king was firmly in control, and popes were generally eager to grant the favours demanded by the king. The papacy had no objection to the way in which Henry used the wealth of the church to reward those churchmen to whom he had given high political office. So, in effect, there's a very cosy relationship between the king and the church, and the Roman Catholic Church in that. So they're not going to rock the boat. It's accepted that, look, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So long as the king is respectful of what the Pope wants, the Pope won't interfere if the king is seen to be using the church to his own advantage. The church in England was administered through two provinces, Canterbury and York. Now, you might be familiar with these anyway. Now, the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is down here. I'll use a pen rather than my finger. The Archbishop of Canterbury is down here, over in Kent, not far from here. If you've not been to Canterbury Cathedral, I urge you to. It's a beautiful place. Nice place to go to university as well, if you're looking at your options already, which you probably should be. And up in the north, we've got York. So we've got two key areas of the country, traditionally the south coast and, of course, the north, which are strongholds, places of power for the church, which is going to be significant. There's also 17 dioceses. Now, a diocese is an area under the pastoral care of a bishop in the Christian church. So, for example, to come back, we've got, and these roles still exist, so this is hopefully quite interesting for you or revelatory, Bishop of Durham, Bishop of Carlisle, Bishop of York, Bishop of London, Bishop of Norwich, Bishop of Ely. Okay, so you've got bishops, Bishop of Exeter down there, Bishop of Winchester, Bishop of Chichester. They oversee and look after those particular parishes, those particular dioceses. It's not unusual to equate it, I think, to the Earl system of Saxon England that you might remember from GCSE. Now, as it says, some of these dioceses, such as Winchester and Durham, enjoyed considerable wealth, and it was common in the late 15th century for senior churchmen to enjoy positions of significant influence and power within the kingdom. So it wouldn't be unusual, for example, to have a member of the church to be part of your Council of Advisors, to have them as Lord Chamberlain, that sort of thing. There was also no rules at this stage on having more than one different role. So you could be diocese of bishop of two dioceses, for example, and benefit and enjoy all of the extra opportunities that gives you for titles and land and wealth and influence. It was common for senior clergy to participate at a high level in the political process. During much of the medieval period, it was normal for the most senior figures within the church in England to be drawn from the senior ranks of the aristocracy. Margaret Beaufort's great uncle, for example, had been a cardinal and Bishop of Winchester. The two churchmen who exercised most power under Henry VII were John Morton and Richard Fox. Some offices of state, especially that of the Chancellor, the highest advisor to the king, were monopolised by clergymen. Monopolised means always. So always held by clergymen. Clergymen means people from the church. The most senior clergymen were, on the whole, highly competent and conscientious professionals, often with legal training, who performed their duties to both church and state effectively. The abbots, who were the heads of the wealthiest religious houses, shared membership of the House of Lords with the bishops. They also had to possess a range of management and administrative skills to keep their complex organizations running effectively, as well as demonstrating the spirituality necessary to maintain the reputation of their houses. Not all heads of house lived up to all of these demands, and criticisms of the monastic life were increasing. Okay, so we've been through quite a lot there, and I think it's certainly time for you to do a bit of thinking yourself and a little bit of writing. So just going to give you a moment just to catch up with Cornell notes that you might be writing whilst I prepare what I'd like you to do with this next. Okay, guys, what I would like you to do, please. Now, if you are not wanting to work on paper, if you want to just go to the bottom of your Cornell notes beneath the summary and do this there, or if you're wanting to work on paper in your book, that's absolutely fine as well. I've got 4 sentence fragments which should be appearing for you, as you can see here. What I want you to do, please, is to turn each of those into a sentence. I don't mind whether you put them at the front, the middle, or the end of your sentences. What I would like, though, is from those 4, at least one of those is going to be the start of a sentence, at least one the middle, at least one the end. Okay, so have a go at turning those into sentences. You'll most likely want to look back over the pages we've looked at in Tilbrook, which is 51 to the top half of 53, and you can have a go at that. I'm going to give you till 1 o'clock, so it's 12:53 now. So I'm going to give you 7 minutes, maybe I'll stretch it to 10 if I'm feeling kind, to turn those 4 fragments into 4 full sentences. Any questions about that, guys, before you get going? That's a good typo, given we're doing religion, Beth. I quite like that. All God. You're right. It is all God. Okay, right. I'll put that back up so you can see the fragments. Off you go. Okay, guys, we're going to move on. Don't worry if you haven't finished those completely, but let's just get some ideas just to check in that we're in the right sort of area. So this is going to require unmuting, I'm afraid. Fran, could you tell me, please, what did you put for your sentence, including over 8,000 churches?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Is that working? Yeah. Okay. I spoke about how there were over 8,000 parish churches, and they like provided the religious experience and like about the festivals. I wasn't really sure how to word it, but it basically allowed people in society to like demonstrate that they're good intentions and stuff like that.
Good. I like that. Yeah, that idea of giving them the opportunity. That's really good. Thank you. Aaron, can you tell us what did you put for preservation of social hierarchy? Is Aaron there? Or has he logged on and gone off to play PlayStation? Okay. Beth, what did you put for preservation of social hierarchy? Okay, Aaron, I believe you.
I wrote that they were able to preserve social hierarchy through encouraging like good behavior and obedience, and like making sure that the ordinary people were reminded of what values they had to uphold.
Good. Yep, I like that. Really good. Thank you. Aaron, then you can type. What did you put for influence in political affairs? So I said it was common for members of the church to have an element of influence over political affairs. It was mainly seniors who had this influence. Good. And then what you could do, you only heard a sentence, which is fine, but to expand that, you might put, for example, and give examples of where that actually happened. Good stuff. Now, in terms of mutual interest, hopefully you had something along the lines of, this is where I go off the top of my head. So I am going to put that, I'm going to start with it, mutual interest in preserving their position and influence over the lives of the people meant the Pope and the monarch accepted the role and significance of the other. Okay? So you get the idea, something along those lines of this mutual relationship where they can both gain. It isn't automatically that it is problematic, or there's lots of crossing of different aims. As I said before, and if you think back to, I always think a great example of this is when we think back to the work we've done on the Cold War at GCSE. When the aims are mutual, then there's no problem. You can be united. It's when there is a case where, in order for one side to achieve their aims, they need to undermine the aims of the other. That's when conflict arises, and we will come on to see that when we look at what happens with religion under Henry VIII. Okay, what I'd like you to do just to finish is in your Cornell notes, you should have a few Cornell notes, not loads, and that's fine. If you haven't got huge amounts, it wasn't my intention, but you've obviously had a look at this process. We've only been through 2 or 3 pages together, and that's fine as well. What I'd like to do, please, is on your Cornell notes is just to write at the bottom, just compose a paragraph which summarizes, based on what you've read so far and what we've talked about so far, the position of the church in England under Henry VII. So basically, just pull together what you've been looking at today and just turn that into a paragraph for me. Off you go. Okay, a couple more minutes. Okay, Isabel, could you share with us, please, either unmute or if your mic's not working, just copy and paste if you typed into the chat box what your summary paragraph was, please.
I didn't finish it, but I'll read.
Okay, do you want a bit longer? That's fine. Let's say another 2 minutes. That's fine. I can't see your writing, so it's a bit harder for me to judge. So I'll say 2 more minutes, guys, and then we'll see what Isabel and a couple of the others of you have come up with. Okay, right, Isabel, let's see what you've got. If you haven't finished yet, it's all right, but just tell us what you've got so far.
I put that during the reign of the Henry VII, church and religion was popular and traditional, and it was adapting comfortably to the modern age. Lives were lived and regulated according to the church's major ceremonies. The parish church was the focus of religious experience. It also provided employment opportunities and opportunities to advance socially. The relations between the church and state were cosy. The clergymen were hugely involved in political process and most had legal training and administrative skills to keep their complex running effectively.
That's brilliant. That's really, really good. Thank you. Excellent. I really like the idea of the church and state coming closer together. And I think that's you can almost see if you think about, there's like a pincer movement between the two, and eventually they are going to end up bashing into one another. And that's when we're going to get that idea of the break with Rome and all the problems that come. But we will, I'm not going to hit you with all the ideas behind the religious sacraments and that sort of thing at this stage, but we will come on to that. And so we get a bit of an idea about the beliefs themselves. But what I wanted to focus on today really was that structure and the role that religion's playing. So thank you very much, guys. Before we finish, has anybody got any questions about what we've been over or anything else? You may have noticed I realised I've marked quite a few of your bits and stupidly hadn't actually clicked to return the drafts. So if you're receiving stuff from me now that was actually you handed in like 6 weeks ago, please accept my apologies. It isn't that I've only just looked at them. It's that I've just realised that they weren't actually returned. So apologies for that bit. Has anybody got any questions that they want to ask? Lovely. Well, I'm going to let you go, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and obviously, most importantly, in fact, do I see you tomorrow? I do, don't I? Let me just check. Fantastic. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I'll see you first thing tomorrow. So I'll see you first thing tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the morning. Thank you very much. Bye, guys.